make a continuation of my RuneScape Classic series, and that's what we're doing today and in the next video, which should come out closer to the end of the month. The whole goal of this account is, and a lot of the stuff I find very interesting, very cool, very unique, because why were some of these things removed when moving from classic to old school, such as a strength training method you'll see today, or another thing such as the Witch's House quest being one of the first quests nowadays you want to complete in old school, but in classic it was completely different. You had to go through 5 forms of combat without retreating from combat, and when you're in combat in classic, for example, you can't even eat. So you need a decent amount of levels to complete Witch's House quest, and it's actually one of the harder quests in the game to complete because you have to stay in combat during that entire fight, and that's going to be something I'm going to be trying to overcome today. Once again, we're routing the entire track of quests in a weird fashion because all of the levels and rewards from quests come from a form of base XP multiplier, and they're not just straightforward static value reward XP like old school RuneScape has with their quests and a very set number of rewards per quest. This is all based on your current level with a multiplier. Now, I am going to be continuing on in my level 3 journeys here pretty soon. I actually have 2 videos planned that have been taking me months to complete. That's where most of my time has been spent. I'm going to be overcoming things that no other level 3 once again has done on my level 3, and it's been very frustrating, a very painful headache to be honest with you, but I think the videos in the end coming towards the end of this year in December will be great to watch and to look back on, even for just myself, because I would say it's probably one of these videos particularly has been the most difficult challenge I've ever faced in RuneScape. Yeah, more difficult than a level 3 Fire Cape, more difficult than like level 50 something Infernals I've done, more difficult than practically everything I've done, even Perilous Moons, which I thought was going to be one of the worst. It was not. It's crazy how I'm able to come up with new goals on a level 3 account that actually require some weird technical skill that I didn't even think of a year or 2 ago. But look forward to that in the next coming month, and look forward to 2 classic videos for the continuation of this series this month. So a bit random here, but I'll be having a Top Tuesday come out on Prison Joe's channel, and you'll see I've picked up some bad habits in the last few months. But I believe with today's sponsor and the product of today's video, Fume, these habits have finally ceased to exist. Fume is a flavored air device that's perfect for anyone who's looking to break away from bad habits or just wants something enjoyable to use. There's no batteries, there's no vapor, it's flavored air in a stick that you can inhale. Or if you just want to, you know, do something with your hands or mouth like me constantly because of my anxiety. It's got a nice kind of fidgeting experience to it, to where you can actually adjust like the airflow that's coming into it. You can move it up and down. It even comes sold separately, this stand here that you can literally sit it on, and it can twist around like a fidget spinner. Okay, this thing is pretty cool. Thanks again to Fume for sponsoring today's video, and this holiday season you can give the gift of better habits with this device. Head to tryfume.com/Rendy and use code Rendy to get a free Fume topper when you order a journey pack. It's the perfect addition to make your gift even more special. Again, tryfume.com/Rendy, or just scan the QR code on the screen to grab yours now and make someone's holiday unforgettable. So it's been 228 days since I've logged in to this server. This is a server. RuneScape Classic is no longer working or running, I should say. They shut it down. This is RuneScape Preservation, where everything's a one-to-one code of what Classic was. And when I say one-to-one, they even made sure the glitches in this game are exactly the same. They've spent years and years and years trying to get everything identical to a T in this server. And actually, this server has a higher concurrent player base than Classic even did towards the end of its days. So first of all, we got to catch up on what we did last. Basically, I spent hours and hours burying bones out in the wilderness, and then I ended up doing a Holy Grail quest along with all of the quests before that, in order to get a head start on prayer and get the paralyzed monster spell, which is not even a spell, it's actually a prayer, but it's basically protect melee at 37 prayer instead of 43, and most of the monsters in this game are using melee. There are a few using projectiles, and there is a protect from missiles at 40 prayer, which I'll eventually get anyways, because I do need 40 prayer for Legends Quest, and it's a hard requirement that you absolutely need. So this prayer is kind of the first thing I wanted to focus on in the last episode of what I was doing here on RuneScape Classic. And it's going to help me with all of the bosses, all of the NPCs, and even just walking from place to place throughout this game, because I'm going to have very low defense, very low hit points, because the overall goal, once again, is to get a Legends Cape at the lowest combat possible, meaning my stats are going to be very low, and I'm going to be facing a lot higher level NPCs. But I didn't actually finish Holy Grail last episode. I was confused towards the end as to what order I should take on the quest Dragon Slayer versus Holy Grail, and I actually had these backwards. I should take on Holy Grail first and complete that, because it does give a higher base multiplier to defense than Dragon Slayer does. And that's what I was worried about the most, is because once again I have to look at these multipliers and make sure I don't get too high of stats by doing the quest in the wrong order. Say if I were to do Dragon Slayer first and there's a lower base multiplier and I use that on the lower skill, then use a higher one on the higher skill after I've leveled it after Dragon Slayer, then it's going to give me quite a higher defense level and possibly change an entire combat level in the end calculation for this goal. Another point I want to reiterate, and I'll be using a lot of in today's video, is the fact that I do have an alt account. It's basically just a combat level 30 main, and eventually I think I'm going to be putting it at Chaos Druids with 30-ish combat stats, so I get auto attacked and I'm fatigued and I can constantly get herbs from the Chaos Druids. I think I'm going to do this for herb lore eventually, unless I can find other alternative means of getting my herb lore up, which I'm going to be looking into in today's video. But yeah, the purpose of this account for today's video is it's going to be doing some money making, quest helping, and skill and resource gathering, because there is a limited economy on this server. There's not many people who play it, obviously, and there's not a grand exchange. As well, I'm going to be using this alt account a lot in navigation, following behind my main lower level combat account I'm going for the actual Legends Cape on, because I will need to fatigue my character whenever transporting from area to area and doing most quests, because there is an automatic auto retaliate whenever you run into NPCs, and you can't retreat for them for 3 turns of combat, meaning I can do damage very easily on any NPC. And if you do damage to any NPC, even if it regenerates to full HP and someone else comes along and kills it besides you and you're not fatigued anymore, well, unlike OSRS, you get combat XP when the monster dies, and you get a share of that being the first person who hit the NPC. Yeah, once again, even if it regenerates to full HP. So some guy could come days later and kill an NPC that I hit a 1 on, and it would randomly give me XP if I'm not fatigued. So my alt here is going to follow this account around and finish off some NPCs that maybe that alt accidentally auto retaliated a 1 or higher against, just in case a random guy in the server decides to kill something and I'm logged in and I'm not fatigued. That's another point I want to put out, is I'm going to be fatigued a lot during this adventure, because fatigue basically occurs in RuneScape Classic whenever you've leveled skills quite a bit, and it goes up to 100%, and once you're at 100% you can't gain XP. But this is going to be great for me. You still gain XP from quest, but you can't gain XP from monsters or skilling activities and all of that. So I can actually take on monsters without gaining XP in a lot of the quest, and even outside of the quest if I need certain resources. So basically, before I travel from area to area and do certain quests, I'm going to make sure my fatigue goes back up to 100%, except when I'm getting skills required for quests. My alt account will also be used for tasks like distracting NPCs, which you can see in the last episode and this episode. And this can be done in Classic, not in old school RuneScape, by talking to NPCs, and it just basically distracts them entirely, such as their dialogue and them stopping you here from collecting tea from the stall. He can't see you because he's in a chat with another player, being in my alt account. I'm able to freely thieve tea here and never have to worry about this guy catching me. So while I am unfatigued, the plan is to get 25 thieving currently from these tea stalls. Thieving is required for several quests, and eventually I'll even need 42 for Temple of Ikov and 50 for Legends. So getting thieving up is just something I'm going to be having to do, and it's going to get my fatigue up back to 100% before I go on take on some quests anyways. The plan is to try to do dig site now to test a possible herb lore method that won't require tons of resources and time, like that Chaos Druid idea I had where I sit on my alt at Chaos Druids indefinitely auto retaliating them, which I guess is somewhat AFK, but still would take a long time, and your inventory is very limited in this game, and banking takes forever from that location in Taverley Dungeon. So the best idea is going to be to find another route to get herb lore, or should I say herb law as it's called in RuneScape Classic, for Legends Quest. So I'm going to be looking for herb lore methods in both dig site quests, which has a 25 thieving requirement, which is another reason why I got 25 thieving, as well inside of Jungle Potion quest, because there are some alternate ways in OSRS to train Herblore through these 2 quests, but I don't know how the mechanics work in Classic, and that's what we're going to be figuring out in the next few minutes of this video. So to even do Dig Site, I need to get 10 Herblore, and that's going to be done through finishing Druidic Ritual and Jungle Potion, and maybe cleaning a few herbs I have in my bank. So I used my ult to gather the rat meat and the bear meat and traverse across the entire game walking, because you cannot run in Classic, and finally got what I needed for Druidic Ritual. Once again, the ult is going to be used for a lot of resource farming because the economy in this game is so small. I got fatigued, started Druidic Ritual, and at first I thought I could just lure these 2 guards away like on OSRS and not kill them, but unfortunately I have to somehow actually kill them with my terrible stats or use my ult. So I brought my ult all the way to the Druidic Ritual area in Taverley Dungeon and tried to kill these NPCs. I was able to do this. My ult though does not have Paralyzed Monster, and therefore it can only stay in combat so long, and eventually gets damaged and has limited food as well and limited money. So I'm going to be cutting this closer than I thought, because as I found out, these knights here respawn relatively quick, and there's also skeletons attacking my account here. This took about half an hour to set up and finally kill the 2 knights in order to then go through the gate in just enough time before it respawned another knight, and without a skeleton interrupting combat, as you can see here, which happened one time. It was very difficult to get past this phase with my ult's terrible stats, but it had just enough to kill both of the knights before they respawned and then go through the gate on my lower level quest account. Who thought Druidic Ritual would be even slightly difficult, but it was actually very difficult, and I had no supplies left. Even getting out of the Taverley Dungeon was kind of difficult. Perfect timing, and I finished Druidic Ritual. Okay, so now we can climb White Wolf Mountain since I have Paralyzed Monster, or can we? Barely. After going through the entire White Wolf Mountain, I only had 8 prayer points left, and I got stuck in some areas that were kind of scary. And I noticed that you can rotate your camera. The NPCs aren't client-based. Whenever you rotate your camera, they're actually rotating with you server-sided as well, so you have to rotate them out of the way to walk past them. It's very weird, the combat in this game. I want to point out another weird fact about old school RuneScape and Classic. Do you see the screen moving as I'm contemplating to turn in the Grail and re-looking over the quest list for the 1000th time? Well, as you can see, it's slowly moving here, and this was back in the day to prevent mouse-based botting, like click-oriented botting. This feature used to be a thing even in old school RuneScape when it came out in like 2013 to 2015. I'm not sure why they even removed it from the game. Probably though for like more high meta PVM these days that people are doing, which relies on the screen not even moving a millimeter. I guess that could be a reason why, but yeah. Also because not many bots these days probably actually use the mouse clicks and instead use some kind of packet or, you know, client-based action. Okay, so enough of the nerd talk. 6 defense and 39 prayer is what I got from Holy Grail. So if I accidentally did Dragon Slayer first, I would have gotten a lower defense level initially, but then Holy Grail would have multiplied times whatever that was, like say 5 defense, and ended me at like 20 something defense versus around 16 after I do the next defense quest, and the only other defense quest really besides Hero's Quest, which is Dragon Slayer. Eventually I believe my defense will go from around 16 from Dragon Slayer and then 19 after Hero's Quest. Eventually I will need 40 prayer for Protect Missiles and for that requirement for Legends Quest, but we're not focusing on that right now. Right now we're focusing on something much more important, and that is Sea Slug Quest for some beginner fishing XP. I bought a candle for this. I needed some fishing levels for Heroes Quest, so I figured I would get started on that, even though we're very far away from that. I already had 30 fire making as well from something I did for Sea Slug from burning logs at the Wizard's Tower during the last episode. I need 10 fishing for fishing contests, so I figured this quest would get me closer, but then I forgot that everything is based on a multiplier, and after I went through the entire Sea Slug quest, I realized it only got me to 4 fishing from 1, whereas in like old school, I think it puts you at like 20 plus fishing from 1. So I'm still kind of having the old school RuneScape brain with a lot of these quests, and even though I'm mitigating XP, I think I'm kind of applying that to the parts of skilling I shouldn't be mitigating XP. Instead, I should be hyper focusing on maximizing the XP. Everywhere is extremely slow-paced walking, especially walking to the Gnome Stronghold here. I needed 10 agility for dig site quest requirements, so I made my way to the Gnome course, which is surprisingly pretty identical to the old school RuneScape one. Really nothing changed here at all, besides there's only 1 obstacle pipe at the end instead of 2. Eventually I'll need to get 25 agility here for the Grand Tree quest, which I plan to do on the next episode later this month. And that'll also give me enough from the Grand Tree reward to do Shiloh Village quest, which I believe is 31 agility. And the higher your agility level, the higher the multiplier, the more XP, blah, 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 blah. RuneScape Classic quest rewards are weird. Okay, less use of the alt now is good. I don't actually enjoy playing multiple accounts at once, honestly, in this game or any game. Trying to keep my fatigue not too low by answering questions fast so I can pull it back up whenever I need to travel between quests and skilling activities is something I often do with the sleeping bag here. I try and type the code word as fast as possible. As well, this is why I wanted to buy a rune axe earlier. I found out that rune axes actually don't have any requirement to use them when chopping a tree. It's only to wield them, unlike in old school RuneScape, and it just is like, well, it's only 7k, so I bought one. I got it to quickly get fatigue back up because there's trees everywhere in this game, and before moving around I chop trees, sometimes even make arrow shafts, which I can sell for quite a bit of money to buyers in this RuneScape Classic server. I'll also need 10 fletching for Tourist Trip eventually, and 36 wood cutting for Lost City, so I might as well get a head start on some of this. I then finally decided to go to Catherby. I bought some fishing supplies to finish off the 10 fishing requirement for the fishing contest. So what's weird about fishing and almost all of the skilling activities in this game versus old school is you have to click every fishing spot every time you fish a fish. It doesn't just auto catch and continue till the spot's gone. This is slow and terrible. There is one benefit though. The fish does go straight to the ground if your inventory is full and auto drops. That's why the old reference of the term power mining or power skilling was used, because it literally meant you could just keep clicking and not even have to mess with your inventory. But whenever it went to old school RuneScape, it still had the same term used, even though you had to manually drop your inventory each time instead of going to a bank. I decided to keep fishing till 100 fatigue since I needed it anyways before moving around and questing again, and this meant anyways the fishing reward multiplier from fishing contests would be higher the higher level I was. And the cool part about this is in the future I won't have to waste prayer points when going across White Wolf Mountain. This quest actually served a purpose back in the day because a lot of teleports went around, and the underground pass here under the White Wolf Mountain is actually quite shorter than the one on old school RuneScape, and therefore very useful at low levels considering you can't even run in this game, and it's very quick to get through if you're already in Taverley and looking to do something on the other side of the map. I will not finish this quest right now though. I'm going to make a detour real quick to do Jungle Potion quest since we finished Druidic Ritual earlier. This quest is actually kind of scary for me. I'll be having to utilize Paralyzed Monster as Karamja is a pretty dangerous place for low levels in this game, and I'm a low level always, constantly, everywhere I go, even in a game that's not technically old school RuneScape. Also, your items disappear after 2 minutes only after dying. There are no graves in this game, so a death anywhere could really set me back, especially if my ult's not there to pick up my loot, and if I have a lot of valuable things on me, which I typically do carry some coins around, and I don't have much of anything anyway, so pretty much everything is valuable to me at this point. There's also poisonous tribesmen in this game, just like an OSRS, and they do poison. I was actually hoping to find a similar herblore method here during Jungle Potion quest that can be used for like 5k XP per hour, because there's one on OSRS with the pseudofoil here, and that's by searching these rocks and getting the herbs and cleaning more and dropping them. But unfortunately, somehow RuneScape Classic was coded better than before old school RuneScape with this bug, and would literally strong arm hardlock me to only having 1 herb ever. If I dropped my Cetaphil, I couldn't get another one, which probably meant I actually could soft lock myself out of this quest if I really tried to and let the herb disappear off the ground. I was actually going to rely on this method for Herblore to the upper 30s for Legends quest requirements because Herblore, sorry, not Herblore, Herblore in this game is almost impossible to train, especially with the limited resources and players in this game. And the ones who do sell herbs and all of that, they sell you them in certs, and they are very, very expensive. At the end of Jungle Potion Quest, I ended at 9 Herblore, 1 level short of 10, but luckily I had been collecting low-level herbs from Min during my last episode almost a year ago for hours and hours on end. So cleaning these herbs alone, much less making them into potions, would put me at 10 Herblore, the requirement now for the Dig Site quest. I had one more hope in this quest for a cheap yet slow training method to possibly get my Herblore up in this terrible game. Yes, this game is terrible. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Do not play this game, just watch me play it. Terrible game. Time to refatigue myself here. This is kind of scary because these guards could come up and I could auto-retaliate and someone else could kill them. Looking back, not the best idea here. Starting Temple of Ikov now in Artie, even though I don't have the requirements yet. Once again, even in old school still you can start quests that you don't have the requirements for, except for the new ones. There are hard locked quest starts for all new quests with skilling requirements, but the old ones, you can still start a quest. Who cares? I'm going to also take on Plague City and Biohazard eventually for the mining and thieving rewards from these quests, of course, and because we need to complete every quest, because that's the main goal of this series. While I'm in Artie, I also needed Dwellberries to make the gas mask for Plague City, and Vineworms still for fishing contests, so I'm gonna head to McGrubber's Woods. Unfortunately, the entrance to this place is hidden practically, and not the same as in old school, so I spent about 10 minutes trying to find this thing. I finally got in, got some red vineworms, got the Dwellberries, and then went back to finally finish fishing contest, which is practically identical to the quest in old school RuneScape. Not much new here, except for the XP reward where I only got 3 fishing levels up to 18. I honestly should have just waited to do this quest, but I wanted to fish salmon and trout quicker for when I actually have to train fishing for quest requirements, like for Heroes Quest, a long ways away. I made my way to Port Sarim to buy runes next and train my magic because I just now realized magic training doesn't level HP as long as you don't do it in full-on combat, because you will melee occasionally with auto retaliate and you can't turn auto retaliate off in this game. And a melee XP drop will happen at the end of the kill if you even just hit a 1 throughout the entire process of maging an NPC. If you staff bash a 1, you're screwed. Port Sarim jail right next to the rune shop is all caged off and would be perfect for something like this, so I decided to train here till 12 magic and get Fire Strike. I also set up my alt here in Varrock and Port Sarim to buy more runes to train with. I want magic because it is the best form of killing quest bosses this early on, and even with just strike spells like Fire Strike and Paralyzed Monster with full prayer points and monk robes, I think this should be possible to complete even quests like Witch's House, where you cannot flee during all 5 forms of combat, which I mentioned earlier is a very difficult quest for low level accounts in this game. But with Paralyzed Monster, you can do almost anything because once again there are some NPC attacks, traps. I'll need around 50 magic anyways, plus a wizard mind bomb at some point for Legends quest, and I've completed all the magic reward quests already, and yes, once again that is a hard requirement, there's no way around it. Gathering supplies for more quests now, and here is the shorter Whitewood Mountain passage I was mentioning earlier. I went ahead and got the pestle and mortar for dig site quest along with other things, and there is only one entrance to the dig site on Classic, and it's the one to the south. That's because Mortania does not exist yet on RuneScape Classic, and the one to the north pretty much leads there. This dig site quest took me a long while with the walking and slow-paced dialogue. When I say a long while, like over an hour. Even the NPCs that normally you can't attack back, like the workmen here, would attack you if you failed pickpocketing them, and you would go into full-on combat. And I thought this was oddly hilarious because you can't even cast a spell on them because they're not recognized as a real attackable NPC, but you can auto-retaliate them and attack them back with melee. In this quest, you have to convince the workmen to give you the key with an excessive dialogue and many minutes spent just going through this dialogue, versus an old school RuneScape where he just instantly hands it to you for the chemical powder you get from the chest. My plan here was to gather several roots and use them on a potion for a small amount of Herblore XP when making the explosive potion later on in the quest. And on old school RuneScape, you get XP for every step of making the potion. Unfortunately though, I found out here on RuneScape Classic, you only get XP when making the entire thing, which means I have to go back down and get a new key and go through this entire dialogue every single time for just a piece of that potion. And that would take forever to identify and gather all of the ingredients for this very small 5 XP amount of Herblore XP. So this potion is repeatable throughout the quest. Even after the quest, you can get extra Herblore XP and get 5 whole Herblore XP for this entire process, but it is not worth the time or effort by far. I was so confused as well at this point in the quest on Dig Site quest, because in old school RuneScape, you dig for the ancient talisman right here on these bones, but in classic, it doesn't let you. It says you're going to break that skeleton and that fossil. And finally, after doing about 20 minutes of research and inquiring with people, I found out there's a small patch of dirt you're supposed to dig a little bit southeast of that actual fossil, and that's what you have to use your trowel on. So this invisible soft soil patch to the southeast is what I have to use my trowel on to finally get the ancient talisman and finish up this quest. So I had to get my fatigue down to test the Herblore method to make sure that making that potion did give XP. So now I had to get my fatigue back up. I did that through some teas. Because I would be walking through a bunch of skeletons, I knew I would auto retaliate, and I wanted my fatigue up for that in case I got some combat XP from them. I went to pick up the stone tablet finally though, and I finished the Dig Site quest once again, well over after an hour. I should have probably just waited to do this quest until after I had higher Herblore and after higher mining as well, as I'll need those both leveled up for quest requirements, but whatever. I just wanted to get more quests out of the way at this point, especially the longer ones such as Dig Site here. I ended all of these quests with 15 Herblore, and yeah, I will now need to find a way to train that in the future for Legends, and I'm thinking that alt method with Chaos Druids while I'm possibly working on other quests is going to be the way to do that. So finally starting Witch's House. Hopefully the 37 prayer with the paralyzed monster spell with some monk robes will be enough with Fire Strike and some mind runes to get through all 5 forms of this boss without having to retreat, because once again if you retreat you have to start completely over. What's weird about Witch's House is it's on the south side of Taverley instead of the north as you see in old school. As well, you don't have to dodge the witch by pathing in this game. That would be impossible considering you can't even run. And I don't think NPCs even target you like that in this game. They go into full-on 3-round combat with you. So instead you go to the door of the experiment, attempt to open it, then run and hide in the other room when she comes out until she walks away, which kind of almost you have to do tick perfectly. I'm going to have to do this probably a few times, and you'll see why. Attempt number 1. I have to hover over the tab for magic and then click for every single spell in this fight, so I actually needed to be pretty quick here and efficient, or I lose DPS. I can cast a spell about every 3 ticks if I'm consistent, unless I fail a spell and splash it, then I'm on cooldown. And I need to be as fast as possible killing these NPCs while my prayer drains. If I was to use a higher level spell, for 1, I don't have the money to afford Chaos Runes, but for 2, if a spell fails to cast, which happens more often with the higher level spells, then I have to wait a longer period of time before I can cast another spell. I'm also going to put this on defensive here in combat and make sure I'm fatigued during this whole fight so I don't get combat XP and ruin my stats if I do manage to kill the experiment. So here's the first attempt. I didn't retreat because I thought maybe I might get lucky, but unfortunately I died and my shit just fell on the floor here and disappeared before I was even able to get back to it. Hence the 2-minute despawn timer I mentioned earlier on items in Classic and the idea that there is no graves. Later I found out through an admin though that in some quest areas, including this one in Classic, via this server and via the old game, some items drop to ground on death stay longer, up to 10 minutes in boss quest areas, which I found interesting because that never happened in old school RuneScape on its release and would have kind of been beneficial to some instances which I had that happen in 2013 and 2014. So after that death, I had to go collect more runes, new monk robes, new staff, new amulet. Unfortunately, I purchased a lot and kept most things with me. I did get to keep 3 of my most valuable items as you do in normal RuneScape on death, and luckily some people donated me back some runes. And lastly, I just had to gather some more cheese. I think cheese is going to have to be the thing I gather the most of, so I'm going to get some of that here and bank a lot of it for whenever I have to return for another possibly inevitable death. Okay, round 2, fight. I had another issue where this fucking first witch's experiment spawned later than the other experiments in the body of this experiment, and I accidentally kept clicking on it because of this multiple times on multiple attempts. This lowered my DPS while my prayer was running low already. I had to retreat here and decided not to risk everything and die, as the 5th form had a lot of health left and it was not even going to be close. Yeah, I could get my magic higher and buy Chaos Runes, but once again, if I fail one of those splashes, it's going to take longer to reset a new spell, and I'll be honest, I'm just poor. Attempt number 3, otherwise known as death. So here's another close call, but I risked it all and died once again. I forget that you can red bar NPCs in this game, so when something's red barred, it actually might have 1, 2, or even 3 HP left. It doesn't even mean it's pretty much dead, which I thought that might be the case. But I remembered, no, everything's old in this game. It's not old school, it's classic old. I tried getting 2 more prayer points when picking up monk robes the next time after coming back from this death, and I thought that might just be the differing factor to get us the final form and the wolf kill. And here's where I found it on my quick way back, that some areas like this one in quests do have the 10-minute death item despawn timer rather than the 2-minute. So here's the 4th attempt now. So on this attempt number 3, I'm also using a new strategy here. I'm not putting my paralyzed monster on until absolutely necessary whenever he hits around his 2nd form or my HP goes down too far, because he can't hit that hard in this 1st form, and I might as well not put my prayer on until it's absolutely necessary. I literally just got nerd logged during this attempt when attacking the bear. Yeah, that still happens, I guess, on this game. 6 hours, you get automatically logged out. And walking all the way back here over and over again and re-gearing the account has literally made me take now about 3 hours trying to complete this quest that most people think is very easy, but in this game is not so easy. Click the monster, click the spellbook, click the spellbook, click the monster, click the spellbook, click the monster. Finally, just barely with 3 prayer points left. Once again, it's good I'm fatigued here because I would have gained melee XP from killing that there. As you can see at the end with the dialogue popping up, you're too fatigued. I got good RNG finally on this kill, and I can now complete Witch's House and turn in the ball to the boy who lost it hours ago. This is only one of 2 quests to give hit points experience, the largest multiplier first, meaning I wanted to get this quest done first for the least XP. The other quest is Hero's Quest, and I believe that'll get me from 16 to 18 hit points at the very end of my questing journey. It's really awesome I got this quest out of the way. I'm not even kidding. This was one of the most frustrating things I've done in this entire classic game. Probably actually the most frustrating. I did not think I'd be spending over 3 hours on a basic quest like this. I'm going to go ahead and use some more of the runes here I collected to level up magic more, possibly getting more teleport access like the Falador teleport, and then continue on and do some more thieving quests, get closer to that Temple of Ikov 42 thieving requirement. I had to get some snape grass from one end of the map near the hobgoblins near Port Sarim, then walk across the entire world map here to get this chocolate dust from the gnome stronghold for the hangover cure, to then go back and continue the Plague City quest I started forever ago. Finally, I had my plague mask and we could start Plague City properly. Look at how sick this thing looks. First of all, it looks like just a brown sack was literally thrown over my head. That's way better looking than the current plague mask in old school RuneScape, and even the newer one that came out in pre-EOC, which looks like a witch doctor mask. I think that's kind of lame, not gonna lie. I would rank this one, the old school one 2, and then the RS3 one or pre-EOC one last, because that's just garbage. Official Plague Mask tier list. Now finishing up one of the last steps in the Plague City quest, the barrel for the key actually isn't upstairs in the RuneScape Classic version, it's down here near Elena. I would argue the model for Elena, even in RuneScape Classic, now looks a tier higher than the one in old school RuneScape, especially after Maji a few years back ruined all these player models and released Song of the Elves in the old school RuneScape along with the disgusting elf graphics. Okay, finishing up Plague City, we're now at 10 mining and getting closer to 15 mining, where I can finally mine iron ore for Doric's quest to turn it in. Yeah, a lot of what I have to do once again is self-sufficient, like gathering the iron ore from literally mining ores, because the player base is so small here, and also there's obviously not a grand exchange. I could go to some iron ore item spawns, but I think there's only one in the game and it's in the wilderness. Not really worth it. I also need mining for some other quests. Once I get magic up eventually, I can also finally now use a teleport to Artie rather than walking across the entire map or taking a ship to Karamja, then walking to Brimhaven, then taking another ship to Artie. Transportation is rough out here. There's not even an Edgewell lever to Artie on this game. The only lever there is in Artie, and it goes back to Artie as well. Okay, speaking of Artie, we're now going to complete Tribal Totem in Artie. This gives some more thieving XP. I'm going to do these quests in order that it gives me the smallest multiplier first, because I'll be gathering higher level thieving as I go up and getting a larger multiplier on larger levels. So we're doing largest last rather than first on some of these scaling rewards from these quests in order to optimize the level outcome from there versus the combat XP reward quest, which once again we're doing in the opposite order. And yes, now I'm on top of a crate in the middle of this quest. This is another example of my life right here and why I always need to be fatigued. Even this mugger can still attack me because I'm at a low combat level still. And there we go, completing Tribal Totem and getting 28 thieving. Next, for more thieving XP, I'll try my hand at Haziel's cult quest, and you'll see what I mean when I say try my hand. I realized I think I accidentally picked the wrong side to go in this quest. This NPC I have to kill by siding with Haziel is actually the most impossible thing to do with my current stats. I did not think this through. I thought I was going to be able to kill it by fatiguing myself like with the Witch's Experiment and then manual casting it with strike spells while I use the Paralyzed Monster prayer spell, but this is a talk to NPC kind of like the dig site worker, and like I mentioned earlier and in the original classic, you can't use manual cast spells on NPCs like this unless they're bugged. The bugs are fighting back at this point, as you can see. I literally can't use magic on this guy, and no, there's no auto cast in classic even with staves. They're just good for magic bonus. I later tried using my Excalibur, which is basically a mithril weapon with no attack requirement and a full amount of prayer points to take this guy down, but unfortunately I just couldn't kill him with my terrible melee stats. So I think this is where I start thinking about grinding towards strength soon. I'll need 40 strength anyways, plus the boost from a super strength potion to eventually do Legends quest, and I've already looked into it again. No, there's no way around this requirement, no fancy bugs, none of that. It's a hard requirement, and the only thing I can do is use the super strength potion boost. But for now, I'm going to take a break from the Haziel's cult quest temporarily and try out this UIM-like smithing method where you buy bronze bars from this shop inside Brimhaven and then move over here next to this anvil and use it and make bronze equipment. On this version of the game, the anvil and shop are much closer together. Unfortunately, I found out though there are tribesmen and goblins which poison you, interrupt your shop options, and make just things absolute hell around these parts. You would need multiple alts to hold off these. I could cover the tribesmen eventually with one of my alts, being the only one I own, but I couldn't really hold off the goblin near the shop, and it kept messing up my shop dialogue as I tried to buy more bronze bars. As well, you have to wait a while for shop respawns, and I had to gather slow respawning anti-poisons from Castle Wars on my alt account before coming here, which took some time in itself. This is not a very low level friendly method, and I need to look for something more low level friendly or maybe more alt friendly. For instance, maybe I can just gather bronze bars at the Shantae Pass shop with my alt while I go take on other things and wait for the respawn of those items, then go back over to Shantae Pass Bank where I can bank them right next to the shop. Eventually then maybe trading them over, and maybe I can do this while training strength. So back to the strength training method. If I get 29 strength somehow from 1 without hit points experience, then I can reverse the order of strength quests with keeping the lower multipliers first to higher multipliers last, eventually doing quests like Scorpion Catcher and Dragon Slayer to boost me from 29 to nearly 40 strength for the Legends quest hard requirement. So I need to find a way to train strength without HP because HP will level us, and I want to keep my HP at 16 now, eventually 19 from the Heroes quest, to keep my combat at the absolute lowest possible. But there is a strange method here in RuneScape Classic that exists which doesn't exist on old school RuneScape. Actually, multiple strange methods that don't exist on old school RuneScape that I can train strength with no HP. The first idea is fatigue training. This is the worst. Honestly, this is absolutely terrible and the concept behind it shouldn't even exist. This is where you basically get to 99.9% fatigue, then roll a kill against a monster on your strength or whatever stat you want to train without HP. And since HP pops up last, such as strength pops up before HP, then you would only get the strength XP before being then fatigued and nulling the HP XP or the rest of the XP in the queue when the monster dies. There's a slightly easier method though that would possibly take hundreds of hours less to level my strength from 1 to 29, and that is bending the window Yes, bending the window in the tourist trap quest. When bending the window in this quest on this version of the game, you can fail multiple times and it takes forever, but once you finally do go through the entire dialogue and get through the window, it does give a small amount of strength XP. With failures, this method results in about 700 XP per hour for strength XP without HP XP. So what did I do? I started Tourist Trap. I defeated the mercenary and got to the part with the window. It looked like this would be my journey for the next 16 hours. Yes, 16 hours to get from 1 to 29 strength. So here we are. For the next video, plan on me finally hitting 29 strength through this method, which for some reason only exists in RuneScape Classic and was removed from Old School. And after that, maybe I'll be ready to finally finish up Hazel Cult Quest, get some more thieving XP, maybe now that I can finally kill that bastard NPC about 16 hours later. I plan to next finish off the 40 strength with some of those quests in that particular order, and then gun home my way towards completing Dragon Slayer last, which Elvarg in itself would be very difficult with these stats, as you can't protect for most of his damage with just Paralyzed Monster spell. Expect that in the next episode. More strength, more quest, the lowest level Dragon Slayer 1 completion on RuneScape Classic, killing Elvarg with terrible gear and stats. Thank you all so much for watching today's video of RuneScape Classic at the lowest combat level. I plan on once again basically completing RuneScape Classic with the Legends Cape eventually one day at the lowest combat level. I know this is kind of filler content, but I'm kind of branching out into new games almost. It's kind of the same game, but it's a new game. This was a very casual upload indeed, but I hope you'd enjoy it. And once again, I have another one of these coming out at the end of the month, and then at the beginning of the month, expect a new level 3 video where I do something that no level 3 has done. And at the end of December, possibly even the middle of December, expect something wild. Something that has been my hardest challenge ever to date, that you probably would never even think of, but when you're watching it back, you're going to be like, this man is literally insane. If you don't think I'm insane already, I mean, look at me. Anyways, once again, thank you all for watching today's video. I know it's different. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you wish, and I'll see you all next time in just a few days. By the way, one last thing. This Fume product, I'm not just shilling it here. This is actually something that's been great for my OCD and anxiety and everything else. I don't know why. It does have some kind of working mechanism to it, to my messed up brain. So if you want to try the product out, check out the code or the link in the description below. Thank you all for checking out Fume, and thanks for watching the video.